Thank you for joining us, Victoire.
Thank you for inviting me. Actually.
Yeah, very happy to have you joining us. Maybe I'll start off asking you, are you a collector? Did you ever buy a photograph?
I have a weird answer about that. I start collecting painting actually, but not photography yet. But I'm definitely wanted to like grow at some point kind of a collection, because I really like the fact that all those pieces can inspire me. So that's definitely something that I'm trying to do like now.
Maybe you can add some photographs to the painting collection.
Yeah, definitely.
Right?
Yeah,
can go together. Yeah,
of course.
Do you ever exchange works with maybe?
Yeah, I did once exchange works. Yeah, with a painting. And I also liked that way of collecting. I think it was really interesting to do that.
Yeah, you are very lucky that you can.
Yeah, that was great.
I'm also very curious. How is the lockdown for you? I wanted to say was, but we're still in.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I have a bit of feeling that the first lockdown was really special, I would say, in the way that I was in France for working, and then at some point the lockdown was turned on. So I decided to stay in France. And I take it this first lockdown as a very special moment, although it was like basically I think awful for a lot of people, but I felt lucky that for me was actually also a good period of time to really work on my project. So I really had like 2 months ahead of me only for my art project. And I think this time, like this period of time, kind of like never happened to me before. So in that way, I felt lucky that I could really like spend a lot of time on this last series of work, which was actually definitely not expected. Also,
yeah, because you already had this idea for a new series when the lockdown started.
Yeah, but I didn't exactly know. I mean, it was like also part of my graduation project for my school in Paris. So I had to produce something. And then, yeah, suddenly I think I also adapt the whole work to the situation of the lockdown. And then I was, that changes. Yeah.
Maybe it's good to go back to the beginning of our cooperation, because I think it's maybe interesting to see this development, because I first came across your work at the Rietveld Academie. It's the art academy in Amsterdam. It was in 2019. So this is your graduation work here on the picture. And this was this like very intriguing, serene, quiet series of mountain views and details from mountains. And you mixed it with, I think, some sort of textile, images of textile. And I was really impressed by the presentation in the series. And then I contacted you just to see how you were doing and if we could maybe cooperate together. And then I found out that my favorites from this series were no longer available. Because if I look for new makers for the first editions, of course, I always have to select a work that is still available. That is, it doesn't have an edition yet, and I can sell it in the gallery. So then at that moment, it never started between us. Okay, maybe in the future. But this series was very popular and a lot of people really liked it. And then you presented the work in Haute Photographie.
Yeah.
It's a photo fair in February in Rotterdam. So this was a bit similar to your graduation presentation. And how did you continue after your graduation? Because I know a lot of people, a lot of artists experience like this black hole. How to continue? How was it for you?
Yeah, the thing where I was, I think, lucky, or maybe not. Now with a bit of distance, I was like, oh, because I actually, during my study, I made like a double degree. So with my school in Paris and then with the Rietveld. So when I arrived at the Rietveld and graduate there, I was still missing 1 year from my school in Paris. So I had to graduate. So I still had to graduate from that school. So I basically did like 2 graduation projects in a row, which at first I thought that's okay, then that's perfect because that would keep me busy from the first graduation. But yeah, I have to say that it was pretty intense to like do like two graduation project, but also 2 full projects, because the graduation project for my school in Paris is basically what I'm selling now with the first editions. So it was also a very different project. So yeah, I only actually experienced this like black hole or very weird floating periods. For me, it's more like a floating period, but I started to experience it after last summer until I think January, or like really like a few months ago. And for me, it was really like I needed some sort of break with also my own practice. So I basically put my cameras in a cupboard for like a few months, and then just decided to just give them some rest as well. And yeah, it was actually very important, I think, to do that. And that also helped me to, I think, not rework on this project, but I think taking some distance from it, and then also how to now really present it, how can I talk about it, etc. That helped me a lot to take some distance from that.
Because my experience is that when people graduate, photographers graduate, it's difficult to continue with what will be the series to start your professional career. How do you continue? You're not a student anymore. You have to be the professional photographer. And when I went back to your website, like after, I think it was a year after your graduation, because your name was on my list. So I went back to your website and I was so impressed by this second series, how you continued after the Rietveld. So for me, there was no question that I really wanted to work with you. And this is what I saw. I recognized the
mountain, they were still there.
Yes. But then you have these new works with much more color. The color blue is very catchy and outstanding here. And then I noticed the text that was added to the works. Was it the first time that you used text in a...
In that way, yes. But what I did, so after the graduation from the Rietveld, I also made a book out of this selected work. And in this book, I used text, but it was more like short paragraphs. I was like, telling a whole thing about, actually, it was more like a personal story, like as a diary almost. But this time with this series, the text actually, I couldn't say why I started to write, but I was like, I had this like amount of time ahead of me, and I was like, I really want to. I was shooting photo like almost every day, I think. So that was during the first lockdown, and then in the same time, I was writing a sort of diary as well every day. So sometimes it was just like a very small sentence, sometimes it was very much longer, and I realized that's when I edited the picture, and with the text, I was like, I think there is something that could be combining, or and then, because for me the picture was telling something, and then the text was telling another thing, and then putting both together, for me was like almost creating like a third image, like an invisible image. And
layer or a second layer, but then it becomes like
so but yeah, it was really, and I really discover actually how to really work with text, and then with word, with sentences, and I really enjoy it. Like, it's definitely something that I would like to continue to experience.
Good. Yeah, because I think I don't have the text here. You wrote actually a poem or a short text. I think it's more a poem. It's in the web shop. So if you look at these two works in our web shop, you'll find the poem. And I would like to ask, what is the title of this series? Because my French pronunciation is not very good. Maybe you can.
So the whole the whole series is called Cette vue que je n'aurai plus, which means this view that I will no longer have. So that's the title, and it's also actually it's one of the picture. It's over one of the picture, this sentence, and I for me was introducing, or it was really like taking all the aspects of this series like into this sentence. It was for me like a good sum up, I would say.
Because if you would translate this to English, and maybe you can talk a bit more about what this series means to you, and what is it about?
So basically this series, it's really like I wanted to share my experience of time, but especially of the present time, and how the time could be in very like fast, and then in its own fugacity, but also very stretching, like, and when I did that, I was like, that's also why I think there's a lot of picture of the sea, because it's like also a pattern of like contemplation, and for me the contemplation is really something like that also help you to understand your surrounding. And then for me it was really important to include in this work like all the sensation you have when you are somewhere. So for instance, when you are in front of the sea, you can hear the sound, the very special sound of the sea, but also the sound of the winds. So this, I really wanted to have it all together.
Yeah, I like that you say that it's about time, because that's for me what strikes me in your work. It's always, it has some sort of slowness in it. It's about like standing still. So that way it's about time. Yeah,
but I think it's also what I like also about photography is, I think photography is definitely about time, and then how also to freeze that moment, that at the moment you take, then the moment after it's gone. So that's also related a lot with memories also. So there is a very personal event of my life involved in that as well, like about like how to grieve. Also, that's really related to time.
Maybe it's good to look at the two images that we selected. Oh, I keep doing this wrong. So this is the first one. Ici, le temps s'étire, in my best French. This is actually an old picture that you used, an existing image, but you added this layer of text.
Yeah, I really like, I chose this picture. I was like, just like looking around at my grandma, and I find a lot of picture that she probably took, or maybe even my grandfather or the great grandfather and mother. And then I was, I had this feeling of like, it was just after I did this whole project about the mountain from the graduation from the Rietveld. And I felt like, oh my, they've been there also at the same kind of area. And I really find it like at some point the time was like, there's no limit of it. So there was like also this idea of, it looks like a deja vu, you know, these feelings that you have already seen something, but actually you don't. And then, yeah, so.
It's like a very universal image, like everyone has some sort of memory.
Exactly. That's definitely that. And then, by adding the layer of the text, and I can then create like a kind of like my own archaeology of image. And I really like, I really like a lot of photographers that doing also this like found footage images in their own work. I think it's really interesting.
And then combining it with images that you made.
Yeah.
This one, it was made also in France.
Yeah.
Au loin, déjà la ville s'allume. So in the distance, the city is
lighting up.
Lighting up, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the color in real, you see it on the screen already, but I'm gonna also take this one because I have the framed works here, of course, also to show you a little bit more, like then you see, well, I've got large hands, but some sort of, but the color of this one is also amazing. So do you want to maybe tell a little bit more where you made this picture?
Yeah, I had this idea for quite few days already when I was there. So this is close by Marseille, my hometown. And I really wanted to take a picture of when the moon is like reflecting on the water. But then somehow the moon wasn't at the good spot with the water. So I was like, okay, let's do it in a different way. And this is actually a picture I took during the day. Like it was, I think, almost noon, I think, when I took it. But I did this like thing. So when I took the picture, I turned at the minimum the focal, so or the other way around. So then a minimum of light could enter in the camera. And then you get this feeling that it's dark, it's at night, but it's not. It's actually called, I think in French, we call it a nuit américaine, which is like American night. And that's how I took this picture. And I was always like amazed by this. So now it's like the sun reflecting on the sea, but they look like diamonds. And for me, it's so like something that I could look like over years and hours along all day long. So I was like, I really should take a picture of that.
And this technique that you used creates an even more interesting and mysterious image, I think.
Yeah.
You really would have taken maybe the photo using the moonlight.
Yeah, exactly.
And, maybe it's good also to talk about, okay, then we selected these two images and then we talked together and also with the framer, L'Encadreur, Eduard, who is sponsoring these frames. And then we chose this very neutral wooden frame. Is this how you always frame your works?
I always like, when you were showing earlier the type of frame, I have to say that I always go, or my first choice always go for like these American boxes for two reasons. The first reason is then you don't have glass, so then you can also be in a direct contact, I would say, with the photographs. But also it gives like really this idea of a box, and that's what we did for the first editions. It's really something intimate almost, that it's really like your own little box that you have to get closer to, and that's you're really in dialogue, in direct dialogue, in your own dialogue with the image. and this I really like about it. That's also why we made this depth, in order to really make like something, I don't know, really intimate. I think that's the word I was.
And it's almost like an object because of it's really a substantial, small but substantial. I've got an interesting question. Sylvia asks, Victoire, what do you think about the fact that photography has lost a lot of its role as truth teller, as documenting reality? Photographers now very often alterate the images. Do your photos depict reality or your truth? I think you just mentioned how you.
I really love this question. I have to say, I can tell that actually during my graduation, during my study, I wrote a thesis about that, like what is photography now, like what after digital photography, what is like the rest of that. And I remember that the conclusion was then but if not now the photography is not anymore like a scientific proof or like a very documenting things, then the only thing left, or the one I choose, is like poetry. And I really like the idea of like, I don't think it's the matter of like the truth or is it true or false, but more is it like what does it make you feel also. And then I'm kind of happy about how this turned out, because I'm also, I would say actually what is actually truth. And then as soon as you take something into picture, you frame it with your camera, you develop it, you print it, and it's could be such a different image from different people. I mean, I always say like if you give one like film negative to 10 photographers, you're basically going to have 10 different pictures. And I really like also this idea of like I'm as a photographer, I'm making my own vision of the word. That's I think that's why I do photography, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you don't consider yourself to be a documentary photographer. That's not what you.
I think I'm in between, but I think the picture can look like documentary picture, but the way I would put them together, then they would become something else. And it is not like I love documentary photography. I think that's really like really great. Like I'm really inspired by that. But I really like to add my own layer on that topic. Yeah. And then to answer if like are they like altered the image, I don't really know. I don't alter my image. Like the only thing I can do sometimes is like to crop them a bit, but I also try not to do that much. So I'm really, if the picture has like a strange atmosphere, I'm mostly doing it when I'm taking it. Not post-production.
Okay. Yeah. Do you have any photographers that are an inspiration to you, or that you look up to, or?
I have to say, like all the photographers from
to be a photographer.
I have to say, like the photographer from like the American landscape, like I have to say I'm like a huge fan of Ansel Adams. Like, well, who doesn't? And then this is very documentary, but that's just like, that's for me, that's probably most of the most beautiful pictures he made. But I'm also really really interested of like artists that like, for instance, there's a French photographer called Thomas Melander, and he's more using photography and also found footage to also make his own archaeology of picture, and that the way he turns the really simple common image into art piece, I really like that. Is also
he's actually a young photographer, right?
Yeah,
his work was also part of several exhibitions here in France.
Yeah, I remember that.
I've never heard his name pronounced so beautifully as he did, so just had to think about it for 2 seconds. But no, yeah, he's really interesting. Yeah. I think maybe one last question. Michiel asks, how does Foam decide when something should be a Foam first edition? That's maybe more a question for me, sorry. But well, when something should be a Foam, of course, I'm always looking for a starting photographer, not really a young photographer. It doesn't have to be someone who's young, but just someone who is starting its career or his or her career. And I'm, of course, also looking for diversity in the sort of image that I present. So each set has to be different from the previous one. I'm looking for a balance in maybe landscape, portraits, black and white, color. So there's a lot of different criteria. And it has to be commercially interesting, of course. So I'm not really looking for a niche, or documentary photography is also sometimes a bit more difficult. And in the end, this first edition is, of course, something that I want to be a success for both the photographer and for Foam, because everything that we sell, of course, the profits go either to the photographer and a part goes to the museum. So that's it's actually not very easy to find a good set of new first editions. I've got one more question from Roderick. How important is Haute and other shows for you? Yeah, that's more a question for you. Art fairs like Haute Photographie and other and Scene.
I think they're like more than important. I think like those fair like that, as a photographer or as an artist, for me, they are really, really like necessary. And what I can tell about my experience at Haute, it was like my very first big show. And I was so amazed how people were like really kind and nice, and then they really wanted to know the stories about the photographs, about the whole series. It was such a joy to share that with people. Like it was just like, yeah, incredible. And of course, it gives you also a lot of visibility, which I think it's really important. And it's really hard, I think, to get at the very beginning, because I was like, just graduate from the Rietveld when I did that. So I felt very, very lucky. Like,
And you enjoy talking to people about your work.
Yeah. And it's always like really interesting also to share, like, because people, I mean, for instance, at the Haute was the photographer of the mountains. So people knew sometimes the places, but sometimes not. And then so there was like a real exchange, like it was a real discussion, a dialogue between us. That I really liked. Yeah.
Well, in your short career, you have been already very successful. So it's very happy that we got to work together now.
Yeah, me too.
I have to say, we started the sales of this set of first editions maybe 3 weeks ago. And
I think so.
Very popular. I think we have to maybe wrap this up. I would say thank you all for watching, for joining us on this. At least in Amsterdam, it's a very lovely day. So I'm very thankful that you're all inside. And Victoire, thank you for talking to me and answering the questions. This was a free event, but if you would like to support Foam, then I would suggest going to the web shop and maybe browsing through our collection and maybe purchasing an artwork. Because with a purchase, you support both the photographer and the museum. If you have any questions, you can write an email to editions@foam.org. And I hope to see you again for another online event, or maybe in the museum. Let's hope we can open
soon.
Thank you all and have a good evening.
You.
Thank you, Victoire.